Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Hot Wash. My guest today is Cliff Van Rickley, a former E8 Master Sergeant in 5th Special Forces Group. He was a Halo team leader and team member for most of his career, and today we're going to talk about his experiences in 5th Group, not only here stateside, but overseas, doing some of the Army's hardest work as a foreign internal defense kind of architect for helping foreign armies fight or combat terrorist groups or other insurgents out there. And he's going to give us some details on his career, what he's doing now post-Army, and talk to us a little bit about how he goes out and prepares himself when he was in group and now that he's out to go out and tackle life's biggest problem. So I'll let you open up the floor for an intro, and it's kind of yours, Cliff. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex, for inviting me on here. It's exciting to see Haven kind of coming full circle back into a, from home defense to preparation. It's exciting. So I spent 20 years in the military before retiring. Majority of that time was in 5th Special Forces Group. First as a support person, later on as a Special Forces communications sergeant, and then as a team sergeant. And was fortunate enough to deploy a bunch of times and lead the Halo team post OIF. So
that's really interesting. I don't typically in the Army, you don't see a lot of folks unless you're in Army Special Ops who are Halo qualified. So for our viewers, why don't you just give them a little bit of information on what a Halo team is, what their mission is, and some of the things you did to prepare to go out and execute the nation's work?
Sure. So a Halo team, I don't know if they've changed it since, but there's one Halo team per Special Forces company. That team is tasked with generally with training up to infiltrate a denied area through clandestine means, that being jumping out of an airplane from up to 25,000 feet and opening up your parachute rather quickly and kind of taking the breeze into the denied territory. So it's an interesting way to infill. There's definitely a lot that can go wrong, but as you know, being a pilot, planning is key. You have to really take into account many different factors: the wind, the weather, light, different radar elements, airspace. I unfortunately didn't ever get a chance to do that operationally, as hardly anybody really has, but it was great to be able to train to that capability and bring my team up to a level where at any moment they could call on us to do such a mission.
Yeah, it's an interesting mission, and for folks who don't really know a lot about the structure of the military, the non-commissioned officer is the backbone of all the service branches. They're the guys who are the tactical operators. They go out and execute the work. They're the most proficient, and officers like myself just kind of stand back, especially in the special operations community, and kind of let these guys go and do their work. So to be on a Halo team is, number one, very difficult to get on, and two, to stay in a team that long, to be able to execute. There's something to be said for that, which, I always wanted to go to Halo school, but obviously it's not in the cards for an aviator. So,
well, I always wanted to go to pilot school, but it wasn't in the cards.
Much higher probability for you to be a pilot than for me to go to Halo school. But yeah. I did airborne school. I did my 5 jumps, and then after that, I kind of hung up the chute and didn't jump a lot after that. One of the things that I look back upon in my time in the community was that the most important course that I ever did was survival school, and I was fortunate enough to do that at Fort Bragg. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about your time either going through the pipeline, some interesting training that you did that helped really prepare you for your military career, and those skills and tools that you learned in that course and how they've shaped you today?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So I didn't come from a tactical background, so I wasn't an infantryman. I wasn't an 18 X-ray either. I had background in communication, so really I was the guy at group who was setting up computers for the battalion commander before I decided to take the jump and go to the Q course. So I took it all in pretty much like a child getting a new toy that you really have to learn, right? So whereas about half the class really knew really great tactics because their time in combat arms and infantry, I was approaching it all from a very, very blank slate. Some might argue that that's great because I had no bad habits to fix, right? So very quickly, I realized that keeping my eyes open, my ears open, and my mouth shut was probably going to be my best defense. My brother, at the time, he was a Special Forces Sergeant First Class, so E7 while I was going through the course. He later on transitioned to be a warrant officer in 1st Special Forces Group. But his advice to me was just shut up and listen and do what you're told and absorb as much information and try to be a team player and do my best to become a leader. So, throughout the course, every single event was difficult. It was learning how to walk in a tactical formation. First time I ever did it, really. Besides basic training, which was nothing. Oddly enough, the most difficult part of the Special Forces qualification course for me was language school, right? So.
And what language did they put you through?
I went through Persian Farsi, so
not an easy language.
Not an easy language. Had to learn a whole new alphabet. Had to learn different verb tenses. Learning a language is never easy. Learning one where you can't even read the letters was doubly hard. But what I learned about myself through Special Forces assessment, through the qualification course was, if you stick with something and you really put your mind to it, you can really surprise yourself. And what I found was that I had actually a pretty good aptitude for language and just communicating, right? So while I never scored a remarkably high score on the DLPT, which is the language test that they put you through at the end, I always did pretty good. I was on the high scale of passing. But what I found was nuance, right? You don't have to be the level 3 type speaker who can speak almost fluently. What I found is that, there's certain things that human beings, the way we communicate, that you don't need to actually know every single word. You don't need to know the context of every sentence. You can feel there's a certain nuance in a certain way that humans communicate with each other.
Yeah.
That I thought was pretty enlightening at that time. So when I deployed, I never actually used Persian Farsi because, we never went to Iran. So thank God, right? But I did have a chance to deploy to Afghanistan, and I had that in my toolkit. And Dari isn't very different from Persian Farsi. It's not the same, but it's similar. And I found that, when it came time to employ those tools, I was able to. So I think one of your questions was, what was the course or the bit of training that shaped me the most? Maybe I'm paraphrasing your question, but like you, survival school, right? So I segue into that because of this. Language school was extremely difficult mentally. Growing up, I was never great at school. I was that kid who barely got out of high school. But that was an academic challenge. I knew I could do the physical.
Yeah.
That was an academic challenge. So I had already passed the physical. That was Special Forces selection assessment. Rather, assessment and selection. That was the physical part. A bit of mental too, because you have to know who you are to pass Special Forces assessment and selection. You have to have grit. The academic part was, to me, language school. And to tie it in a nice bow, there was the internal part that survival school brought to me. Why do I say that? Well, it's fake. It's fake. You know the deal. you know that thousands of people have been there before, and you know what goes on there. Eventually, your body, your hunger, your fatigue starts setting in, and you wonder, this is fake, but it seems kind of real.
Yeah.
You know,
No, you're definitely in that mode where you're like, is this place is for real where I'm in, and you blur the lines of reality and the scenario that you're in for sure.
Yeah, and what I found out, you find out more about yourself in survival school, I think, than any other school. Because you will be hungry. You will be tired. You will be cold, no matter the season. And you have to find that little bit, like the attrition's not high. People get through it, but you still have to look within and find that little piece inside of you that says, yeah, you're hungry, but people have been more hungry. You're cold, but people have been colder. You're miserable, but there's no doubt been people more miserable than you.
Yeah.
And they do a great job of isolating you eventually. Everything's a team event there, but they have the ability to isolate you when you're at your worst, and really you start questioning, is this where I'm at? Is this who I am? Do I have what it takes?
Yeah.
And I think in that brief school, it was only 3 weeks, and the training period that I'm talking about was pretty short too. But I think I learned, who I am. I know you have that internal conversation with yourself that says, all right, I'm here. I'm present. I know who I am emotionally. I know who I am as a person, and I can get through this. So, the Special Forces Qualification course does a great job of blending all those together, where you are tested physically, you are tested mentally, and you are tested emotionally. And I think some studies have been done that would suggest that people who've been through special operations survival school, the Special Forces qualification, of course, in its entirety, from selection right down to language school, MOS school, and the tactical school, SUT, phase 2, does a really good job of really building and assessing the whole person, right? In selection, you have the physical part, and then language school is definitely the mental part of the course, at least for me it was. And then for SEER school, you really tie in that whole person element of it, because it at least in my case, it really tested me on like an emotional level. And not saying that it made me like cry or anything, but it just informed who I was inside, if that makes any sense.
So. No, it makes sense. So you take all this training, right?
Yeah.
And then you deploy. So using this training and language skills, decision-making skills, your technical training, what's the hardest decision you've had to make under pressure utilizing some of this training?
I think Special Operations does a great job of building a mature and total person. Somebody who can make a decision without having any emotion involved, and make it really quick based on DOPE, right? Data of previous engagements.
Yeah.
So with the little bit of Arabic language training I had, combined with the Farsi training, the extensive Farsi training, and just the elements of training until things were second nature, and also just being very in tune to cultural things. I think one thing that Special Forces, Green Berets in particular, does better than any other special operations element is we get to know the people that we work with. I think our cultural IQ is a bit higher than some of the other special operations branches. They're all great. I love every single one of them, but I think that with Special Forces, we're in there. We really get to know the people, We get to know what makes them tick. And a good special forces person comes out the other end thinking, I'm just dealing with human beings. Friendly, enemy, partner. These are just human beings. Every single person on the battlefield has the same needs. Take care of their family probably is number one on most people's minds. A mission that probably isn't a typical war story. Most war stories are, no crap. There I was.
Yeah.
Taking fire from a bunch of different directions, and I had to do X, Y, Z. No, this war story is more like the time I didn't do something. And I attribute it to the thousands of hours of training. The thousands of hours of meetings I had with people where it connected me to not what they were, an Iraqi potential combatant, but who they were, which is a family man, right? So we had a mission, and these were some good times. This was probably 2009 time. Wasn't a whole lot going on, so anytime I called up your boys in the Special Operations Aviation Regiment, we'd call them up at like 2000 and say, we have a target, and they say, we'll be there in 2 hours. Great. So some of your friends put us on target in 3 different landing zones, 4 different ships, and I had the least sexiest part of the mission, which was to take a small squad of Iraqi SWAT soldiers and do a blocking position. Some funny stuff happened there. We knew there was an armed guard. We knew that I would be facing that armed guard. Most likely it would be me.
Yeah.
And I did. I faced him, and this armed guard was armed.
Was just a sentry in the proximity of the target location, or?
There was like a guard house, and he was in it.
Yeah.
And to say he was armed, he was armed. He had a rifle inside his guard shack, and he was wearing his traditional garb with no underwear on underneath. I know this because when I encountered him, I asked him to get on the ground using my Arabic skills. Umbata. He did, and then I realized he was in the line of fire from our approaching assault force. So he was past the LOA.
Which is the limit of advance,
Limit of advance, right? So he was past the limit of advance. I knew that he was in a position where if something went down from the main force, he would be in danger. And he was unarmed. His weapon was meters from him. So I drugged this guy by his ankles to a safer location. And by the time that we stopped, his man dress, or whatever you want to call it, was up around his armpits, and he had urinated from the spot where I collected him to the point where I drugged him.
You saved his life.
Yes, I possibly could have saved his life, but I looked down, and his naked backside was and my friends were laughing at me. Some of the Iraqi soldiers were laughing at me. It was pretty funny. So anyways, the main assaulting force got to where it needed to be, and it was our job now to pick up and move to a different position. And while we were moving to that position, I was approached by a man you could only describe as his boxer shorts and a wife beater. I probably cut his boxer shorts and a white tank top. And he was coming towards me, and he was not stopping. He didn't speak English. I spoke pretty basic Arabic. So in Arabic, I was telling him, show me your hands, stop, get down. And he was throwing back at me an Arabic word. And from my training, I realized what he was saying. And this could have been a pretty tense situation because this guy wasn't stopping.
Yeah.
He was coming at me. He was bigger than me. A lot of people have this. I'm 6 feet tall. A lot of people think, oh, hey, Americans are the biggest.
Nah.
There's big people everywhere, believe me. So this fellow was coming at me, and he was saying the word shurta, 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 which means police. I recognized that he was saying police. And when he got about 5 meters from me or less, his hand came from kind of behind him, and he had a pistol. I had two choices there. And I know that given less amount of training, less cultural awareness training or experience, I would have put 3 bullets through this guy in rapid succession.
Yeah.
But the weapon wasn't really trained on me. You know, it was there. He wasn't complying. Instead, I did my best Karate Kid impression, and I kicked his hand. And this weapon just flies, and I must have kicked it pretty hard because his hand was hurting. And we found the Glock. It was a Glock, actually. It might have been a knockoff, but we found the Glock pretty far away in the bushes. And you know, I detained the man, and he lived to fight another day. And by the way, we found out later that we ended up letting him go, but we found out later that, you know, he wasn't in the right bucket for us.
Yeah.
We probably could have detained him. But at this point in the war, you know, you don't want to detain every single person at that point, you know?
Yeah, you're just clogging up the facility.
Yeah, so he wasn't a good guy, but he wasn't a bad guy. And he said he was police, and I'm grateful to this day that I didn't react in a different way.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't put 3 bullets in him, which would have been real easy. And by the way, also been justifiable. We were being watched by ISR. So we had cameras on us from the C-130s above, the AC-130s. And I made the right call. And I'll tell you, Alex, I got some shit for it, right? We had some folks, not Green Berets, some other special operation unit was with us. And he asked me when we got back, like, why didn't you plug that guy? I was like, I ain't here to do that, man. You know, that guy has a family too, probably. Yeah. I knew the context of what he was saying, and I'm not out here for sport, you know. But I did get the moniker Karate Kid for a while. Somebody made up a fake badge for me for valorous restraint, I think. So
that's hilarious, man.
So yeah, how does this factor into the story? Is just the amount of training, the amount of exposure to just being people.
Yeah,
I think really affected my decision. It was a split-second decision, but I very well could have shot this dude in the face, and nobody.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times people who aren't familiar with the community think that special operators are just quote unquote killing machines, or they're out there just to prosecute the target, and there's very little analytical decision making that goes behind the context of a situation. And I think that more often than not is a good characterization of more immature infantry or tactical level units. And I think that's what special operations brings to the fold, is mature decision makers who've been tested through previous experiences and training to go out and make difficult decisions under duress, under fire. And, you know, most of the time it's for the greater good. It's for the betterment of either a host nation or a partner, or the village that you're working with. And I think that's what separates the community from other military units, other foreign units, is that you somehow learn through these experiences to make contextualized decisions based on these experiences, while somehow pulling from the bigger picture quickly and knowing that if you were to kill that guy, it probably would have been bad for the bigger mission, for the village, for your efforts there for 6 months, right? And so I think that's really something that people should realize and understand, that the community brings to the fight and helps really further our nation's goals with. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Hot Wash. before we get back to the interview, I wanted to mention two great charities that we're supporting. One is the Night Stalker Foundation, which supports 160th Special Operation Aviation Regiment soldiers, families, and contractors who are serving here and abroad. The next organization is Tomahawk Charitable Solutions. This organization was founded by naval special operators and supports a wide variety of local causes here in Nashville and ones nationwide. You can check them out at tomahawkcharitableSolutions.org. Now back to the interview. As we take that really amazing story, how do you translate that to habits that you still carry with you? What do you do to prepare for something? How does someone on the outside who isn't in the special operations community build something into their routine based off of habits, based off of training, so that they can make contextualized decisions to go out and execute something with their family, their friends, or their next biggest goal that they're trying to achieve?
So I think the habit that I still have to this day from my time in the military, from being just a team guy who's out there doing what team guys do, I had a job. So my job was to make sure we communicated tactically and strategically. But at night, my night job, that was my day job. My night job was, I still had to make that stuff work, but we went and kicked in doors. And we brought bad people to justice. So, but the habit I still have is I plan. At 100%, I think of the second and third order effects of just about everything, almost to a fault.
Yeah. So it's contingencies for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's contingency planning. I want to know if this happens. If I do X, what happens as a result of X? And then if that occurrence is Y, what happens because of Y? I still do this in my daily life. My first real job, I would say, although I wouldn't discount what I did with Havenlock as not being a real job, but I was being paid, so sure. Cheap labor. No, but my first corporate job outside of the Army was I was an operations professional for a logistics company, and we had folks who worked in Pakistan. I had to go to Pakistan twice during my time with this company, and also Bogota, Colombia twice. And we were the division of the company we were working in. We had just started it up.
Yeah.
And so the deal with the startup. You make decisions every day. Every single person on a team makes decisions every day when you're in a startup.
Yeah.
If you're not making a decision every day, you're not the right person for the job. So those decisions, they might sound benign, but even when we decided, hey, we're going to go from, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 U.S. time, mm-hmm. to, hey, now we want to employ our entire team in Pakistan over a 24-hour, 365 days schedule, right? How does that affect things? Well, a lot of the people involved were like, well, they're in Pakistan, they need the money, they can just go to work and do what they're told.
Yeah.
And to tell you the truth, I think I wasn't the only voice of reason or anything like that. I want you to think that, but I was the guy raising the hand saying, well, have we talked to our team there to see how this affects them first? They signed up for this. You can't just use people without them knowing what they signed up for.
Yeah.
So I was able to put the brakes on it a little bit, and through a couple of conversations, we found out, okay, great, we can absolutely do this thing. We can run this team 24/7, but there are some cultural things you don't think of when you're in the United States, right? So I our day shift is their night shift. Our night shift is their day shift. In that country, in that area, you couldn't just put anybody on the shift that is their night shift. And what do I mean? Young single women in Pakistan can't take an Uber. They have Uber there. They can't take an Uber in the middle of the night. It's not culturally acceptable. So you have to start looking at things from a more holistic point of view to say, all right, if we make this decision, how is it going to affect these people who are given their all? Like, I have a great deal of respect for the people in Lahore, Pakistan who are working for us. They absolutely did exactly what we wanted to every single time and did it to the letter, how we wanted to do. But, you know, the habit that I developed in the military has stayed with me where, yeah, I can make a split second decision, right? I can say, hey, we're going to do this right now. I don't prefer to, because in my former life, a split second decision on a whim, being hasty when you didn't have to be, could cost somebody their life.
Yeah.
Right. You know, you mentioned earlier, or you brought up, I was a Halo team sergeant. And there's plenty of times when, as a Halo jump master, you're really tired of being in an airplane.
Yeah.
The worst part about being in a free fall team or being a Halo airborne even, the worst part about it is just sitting there waiting to jump out of a freaking airplane. You're starting to feel sick. Yeah. It's cold. You have all this stuff on that weighs a bunch. You just want to get out of the airplane. And you know that everybody with you wants to get out of that airplane. And they'll accept you, and you're initially will think, okay, I accept these risks. Like, I don't care. We can't see the impact point from the aircraft. I know it's there because my GPS says it is.
Yeah.
It'd be real easy to say, oh, let's do it. And 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to be great. You're probably going to break through.
Yeah, but it's that one time.
Yeah, you're going to break through those clouds. You're going to see that like arrow lit up or whatever, what have you. And you're all going to land together and everything's great. But what if it's not? You know? And so you start weighing those risks very quickly in your mind and thinking, all right, if I make this decision, it might be great, but it might not be. Yeah. And it's not being risk averse. It's being smart, right? We have the ability as human beings to weigh what's good, what's bad very quickly. And it takes, what you said earlier, it takes maturity to say, look, we're not jumping out of this airplane until I see that point of impact.
So you kind of took that lesson learned and applied it to the cultural sensitivity of your overseas team.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And you know, I don't think it's one of those things where it's, you're not doing stuff voluntarily almost.
Yeah.
Like, it just comes in your mind. You're like, all right, well, I can change these people's, change the way they get paid, for instance, their commission plan. How does that affect people? You know, and having the experience I did, and quite frankly, the people who I was working with, the great people, the people in America, my bosses, they hadn't had that experience working with other people. They hadn't had that experience where there was life or death scenarios. Yeah. So I was fortunate enough where they really valued my opinion on that, and I wouldn't always get my way. I wouldn't always be the voice of reason that always triumphs, but at least they knew where I stood. I think this might be a bad idea. If we're going to go ahead and do it, here are the risks that I think we're going to take. But if that's what you want to do, I support you. Let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's what, again, goes back to the maturity and the training aspect of it. So to close out for our viewers, based on all of this, your military time, your time in corporate America, what advice do you have for people trying to get to that next level with their lives, their family, friends, or that goal that they're trying to achieve?
You mentioned earlier, you know, whether or not you're going to sell your house and buy an RV and go homeschool your kids,
Yeah.
or any number of other situations. What I learned is if you're going to commit to something, you can't put one foot in and test the waters.
Yeah.
You just got to do it. You got to jump in. You know this more than anybody else,
Yeah.
right? You jump in and you're going to get wet and it might suck, but you don't know if you're going to succeed until you really take the plunge. One thing, for your viewers at home that maybe they don't know about you, but you and I went to the same graduate school.
Yeah.
For me, I was still in the military. I think you were out by then.
Yeah.
When you started. But another interesting segue to a story is I was my time as a team sergeant had ran out, and they said, "Hey, Sergeant Van Rickley, when we get back from this trip, you're done. You're gonna give the keys to this other guy."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, I'm only at like 18 years at this point. What am I gonna do for the next 2 years?"
Yeah.
I was like, and the day that you leave your team as a team sergeant, especially as in special forces as a team sergeant, you know that like it's like postpartum depression.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm never going to be a team guy again. I'm always going to be a support guy. So I took that time and I said, all right, I've just finished my bachelor's degree, which was a lot of work. I was overseas a lot. Got my bachelor's degree on a tough box, I tell people. But I had to make a decision. All right, like I need to up my game a little bit. I know what's out there in the civilian world. Here comes old habits. Planning, thinking of second and third order effects. I knew I had a bachelor's degree. I knew it was from a decent school. Could be better. Next step is, how do I go out there and make myself competitive over the next 2 years?
Yeah.
So I applied for a good school, UNC, and got accepted to their MBA online program. And I knew that it was going to suck.
Yeah, it wasn't fun, for sure.
I had I guess at the time I had a 2 or 4 year old, and then a 7-year-old. They're both very involved in baseball. I was getting out of the military, all these things. I knew it wouldn't be fun. Spoke to my wife, told her, hey, here are the risks. I'm not going to be available for 2 years.
She's like, what's different, right?
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Well, you know very well it is different, because when you're gone, you're gone.
Yeah.
Can't
And
be
then you're
relied
home
on.
and
You're not like a part of the calculation. That's easier from our experience, easier for military spouses.
Yeah.
When you're home and you're still gone because you're in the office doing, college or whatever, that's a whole different ballgame. So we knew the risk. I knew the risk, and I knew that I could potentially be jeopardizing my marriage, my experience as a father, my kids' experience with me. But I knew that the benefit, the like second and third order effect, is that they'd be better off if I just
in the future
did it.
if you just did it. So taking that, plunging in, both feet, just go after a goal you want to attack and crush it.
Have some fucking grit.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you don't give up, nobody can make you give up.
Yeah.
You, as a person, have to decide to give up. In the special operations community, nobody does this better than the SEALs. I'll tell you that. They have a ceremony in BUDS. If you give up, you have to go up there and you have to ring the bell like 2 times. Right?
Conscious decision to say I'm a quitter.
And hey, you showed up, you did better than 99% of the Navy.
Yeah.
But you have to make that decision to give up. So in life, like in special operations, I could have quit at any time during selection. I could have stopped walking, waited for the truck. People who went to BUDS, they could quit at any time.
Yeah.
They're just going to be somebody in the Navy. They can ride it out for 20 years, get a pension, same as a SEAL. right?
Yeah.
Easy decision to give up if you let it be a decision. As soon as you start thinking to yourself, it's an option, guess what? It's a disease. Yeah. Okay, so like my advice to anybody out there who's trying to get to the next level is, number one, jump in with both feet, and just go for it.
Never quit.
And night suckers don't quit.
That's right. Don't
quit. Don't be a quitter. Have grit. And, the good thing about America is there is this equality where if you work very, very hard, you have an opportunity to succeed.
Yeah.
You might still fail.
But at least you had the opportunity, right?
You had the opportunity to do it.
Yeah.
Which is more to say than so many more countries.
That's great.
And so
I'll end this with a toast. I'll let you actually do the toast, but cheers. Thanks for coming on the show. Give us a toast to close us out.
Yeah. So here's to you, Alex, who I know that when it comes to grit, it comes to diving in with both feet, man. You've done it, and your company has really evolved from an idea on paper to a physical object to banging your shoulder on the floor in Hollywood, and cheers to you for being how many years later and you're still with it? You're
6 years, man.
You're demonstrating grit, and thanks, I appreciate man. That. You've been an example.
Cheers. All right, well, thanks for tuning in today's episode of The Hot Wash. Be sure to tune in next week as we release our next episode. Thanks again, and Night Stalkers don't quit. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Hot Wash. Be sure to like and share this video with your friends and family on YouTube and on Facebook. You can check us for new videos dropping every Sunday night at 9 p.m. right here on our YouTube channel, as well as havenready.com. Stay safe out there. Haven Ready for life.
Haven Ready for life.